Originally, I pretended to believe in astrology because I just wanted to piss people off who didn't believe in it. And, I mean, unfortunately, that is a very Gemini thing of me to do. For today's video, I'm going to make a request that I never normally make because I'm pretty happy for people to interact with YouTube videos, whether they're mine or anyone else's, in any way, as long as it's, respectful and nice. But I am coming to you today extremely burnt out and a little bit sick. I had the flu last week. So everyone has to leave me flowers in the comments today. That's what I think would be best, just to boost morale on the Conversation with Cara platform. In the spirit of things being very low energy, I'm going to do a very low maintenance video today, but a video that I have seen other people do similar versions of and that I personally find very interesting. So, as you could probably tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about my favourite books that I've read so far in 2025, as well as my least favourite ones. We're about 5 months into the year, so, there's still more than half the year to go. But I have read some pretty fantastic books so far, and I've also read some pretty disappointing books so far. My least favourite book that I've read this whole year is All Fours by Miranda July. This book has been extremely widely contested online and amongst readers of different groups and different sort of expectations, I suppose. All Fours is about a middle-aged woman who goes on a road trip from California to New York, and she leaves her husband and their child behind for this 3-week trip that she's going to take. But instead of actually fully committing to the road trip, she checks into a motel half an hour away from her house and just stays there for 3 weeks. And she, I wouldn't say has an affair with someone who lives close by, but it's very weird. It's like the lines between what actually is happening and what is not is kind of blurred, and like how seriously she takes things is not always very obvious. And I guess that's kind of where some of my problems with the book start, is that I have no idea what I'm supposed to be taking seriously from this character's perspective, and for that reason I couldn't connect to the character at all. I had no idea what she stood for, what was really important to her in different situations. I couldn't really tell exactly how she was going to react in different situations, and I didn't like that. It's not that I want a book to be predictable. I'm fine with a very unpredictable book, and in fact my favourite book that I read this year is a pretty unpredictable book, at least it was to me. And I like that. I like if I can't exactly tell, but that it makes sense to me what the character does, regardless of whether I was expecting it or not. And with All Fours, I just never felt like I knew why things were happening the way that they are. The only reason for that I could think of was that the author just wanted to kind of shock people into thinking in a different way, which is, fine. That's definitely someone's cup of tea. It's not mine. I don't like being sort of shocked into thinking particular things. I kind of just want to observe characters living their life. That's my favorite thing to do when I'm reading a book. And I don't feel like I got to truly observe what this main character was doing, because she was so obscure in the things that she was doing, but she would also sort of gaslight herself into thinking this was the reason why she was doing it in this way, and this, that, and the other. So it was very odd to read. I just didn't like it. It's just too strange, I think, maybe for me. I don't mind a strange book either. That's the thing. On paper, this sounds like the sort of book that I would really like, and maybe because of that, I was so disappointed by it. But a lot of people really love this book, and it's been nominated for the Women's Prize. It'll probably be nominated for the Booker Prize as well. So it's obviously resonating with a lot of people, and it is experimental in its writing as well, which I don't mind. I'm fine with that. But I was not very interested in where the experimentation was leading, if that makes sense. So I would say that's why it's currently at the bottom of my list of the books that I've read so far this year. My second least favourite book that I've read so far this year is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I spoke about this book in my most recent video as well, and I had a reading vlog where I spoke about this one too. So if you've watched those, you more or less probably know my thoughts, but if you want to know more of my thoughts, you're more than welcome to go and watch them. I'll link them in the description. I was disappointed by The Bell Jar because of its like cult classic status, I suppose, and I think that's got to do with how much people hype it up and adore this book and like live their life by some of the passages in this book, especially like the fig tree metaphor, the fig tree being like all the different paths that people can take, and that these figs are becoming riper and riper, but as you're sort of paralyzed by indecision, the figs start to drop off, and all these opportunities that you used to have that were like absolutely perfect for you to pick at a particular time have just vanished and they have rotten. A metaphor like that is amazing. And do I relate to it? Yes, I do. Of course I do. Everyone has to. Like, that's the human experience. But I don't think I can base my love of a book on one passage in said book. If you don't know what The Bell Jar is about, it is about a young woman in the 1950s who goes to New York and she works there at a magazine, and she starts to experience a sort of mental decline because of the different relationships that she has with people and with herself and with the world, and she just struggles to make sense of everything as well, and she's really struggling with depression amongst all of those things. And then when she goes back home, she feels absolutely hopeless about everything that's happened, and there's just a sort of bleakness that feels impossible for her to overcome. Eventually, she becomes institutionalized because this depression that she's feeling is too much, and it's really coming from a place of being so disenchanted with the world, and even within that setting in which she's supposed to be recovering, she just has absolutely no hope for that happening either. So it's a very bleak book, obviously, but like I knew that going into the book it was going to be quite bleak in that regard. But I think the thing that I was very disappointed about is that it felt like very beautiful writing, but not a lot of substance to sort of back it up. It's very weird. All the right words are being used, but they don't feel like they're sort of fitting together in exactly the right way to convey to the reader exactly what they're feeling. It felt very much constructed, and I do hesitate a little bit to criticize that the book so heavily in that particular regard, because I know it's supposed to be a pretty autobiographical novel for Sylvia Plath and reflecting her own experiences of being institutionalized and her own mental decline into depression and things like that. So I don't want to disregard her experience and invalidate what she felt during that time, but a lot of the story felt very contrived, and I hate to use that word because again I don't want to invalidate her experiences, but it just didn't feel real. It felt like she was trying to coax emotions out of me, and that's one thing that I absolutely can't abide when I'm reading a book. Another thing that I really find frustrating is that Sylvia Plath is very racist and anti-Semitic in this book, and it's quite tough to read those passages because you do want to acknowledge that she's mentally ill, but it's also not an excuse for being a bigot. You know what I mean? Like, I have a very similar problem with Virginia Woolf, and because I feel like her writing is very important and she's a landmark novelist and she wrote feminist fiction when a lot of people just weren't even thinking of doing something like that. But then she's extremely racist in her stories, and I just there's something there. There's definitely a lot of research that I can do about those things, and I'm sure people have made videos about that too. But I do struggle to reconcile my love for a text with the prejudices that people who wrote the text bring to it. I think more than anything else, I was disappointed that I liked The Bell Jar so little, considering the fact that so many people love it so much. Then my third least favourite book of 2025 so far is In the Dream House by Carmen Machado. But this book is a memoir that she wrote about an abusive relationship that she had with a girlfriend in her early 20s. I found the subject matter of this book to be very fascinating, and I think it's so commendable that Machado was able to write this book. Writing about abuse in any sort of way is extremely difficult, but then to write about abuse in a queer relationship is just something that there's not a lot of language for. So she's really forged a lot of language, I think, for describing that sort of experience in this book. And I think that's incredibly impressive. My only problem really with this book is that I don't think I like Machado's writing style. I really struggled to connect to the things that she was talking about just because I found her writing style to be a little bit too metaphor heavy, I suppose. In a way, the metaphor heaviness lends to, I think, the success of the book and why a lot of people have related to it. And maybe at this point in writing about queer abuse, the best way to go about it is through metaphor. So I don't know if it's maybe just because it's kind of a new form that has to be forged in order to write about these things. And that, this is sort of the first pancake for that. And that otherwise I might be okay with Machado's writing style. But I was not a fan of how it was executed in this book in particular. I also read this book quite quickly. I read it in like 24 hours, which is very unusual for me. I'm quite a slow reader. But I think part of the reason why is because the chapters were so short. And another part of the reason why the chapters were so short is because she would always introduce a new metaphor through which to view the relationship or the budding of the relationship or the deterioration of the relationship through different sort of lenses, like through Disney characters or through modern lifestyle or through fairy tales or through history or whatever it might be. It's like different lights that you can throw on the same subject and come up with a different conclusion every single time. I think that's a very fascinating idea, and I have to say for the first couple of chapters I was pretty impressed that she was able to do it, but it just became quite repetitive for me, and I get bored quite quickly if I'm reading a book. I have to be constantly entertained. That is my Gemini side. I can't do anything about it. So I have to be engaged with the book that I'm reading. Otherwise, I just don't see the reason why I have to be reading it. Even though it did keep me engaged because of the short chapters, I wasn't a very big fan of the pacing, the metaphors that she was using. So it's not a book that worked for me, but I can see how this book would work for many other people, and especially how it's an incredibly valuable resource for people who have been abused in queer relationships. Just getting validation through a book like this, I think, can be immensely comforting, and I think there is definitely a lack of these types of books in the world. Now we're going to the more positive side of the scale. My third favourite book of 2025 is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I actually can't believe that I had never read Pride and Prejudice before this year, but I just loved it so much. I think I did save it for exactly the right time. I just needed a lovely pick-me-up sort of book, and it is just an absolute joy to read this. I don't think I have to explain too much what Pride and Prejudice is about. It's a very famous book, but if you don't know, Pride and Prejudice is about the relationship between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy and how they meet each other, and they are extremely, put off by each other, or at least she's put off by him. He just doesn't know how to communicate with her. They're like the original enemies to lovers, and then it's just about them interacting with each other over the course of about a year and eventually falling in love with each other. But it's like in the repressed sort of Regency way, so it's just a lot of fun to watch this sexual tension between two characters who absolutely cannot act on any of that. It's so fun to watch. Jane Austen is so funny. Every single one of the characters in this book feels so real to me. And I mean, that might partially be because I've watched the Pride and Prejudice movie, the Keira Knightley one, 5 billion times. But I don't think so. These characters felt like real people to me. I felt like I know people who are like these characters. Or if I didn't, I know how I would interact with a person like that in my life if I were to meet someone like that. It's just so fun to read a book where an author truly knows how to write characters so realistically and with so much warmth and humor. I just love it that she doesn't take the characters too seriously, even if the characters are taking themselves super seriously. And I just love the relationships between the characters. The conflicts feel so realistic. The ways in which they disagree with the other characters and then sort of like, have internal battles with themselves and then change their minds. It's so well done. It's so deserved. It's so rewarding to read a book that is so beloved and has been for like 200 years at this point. Like, there's a reason why Pride and Prejudice is such an enduring story. And I'm just so happy I read this. I can't wait to reread this like so many times throughout the rest of my life. It's such a heartwarming, heartfelt, beautiful, beautiful book. And if you've never read Jane Austen before, I think you can definitely start with that one. It's very accessible, even language-wise. It's not too tricky to follow. Of the Jane Austen books that I've read so far, it's definitely the easiest to follow. So, would highly, highly recommend. I absolutely adore that story. My second favourite book of the year is by one of my favourite authors of all time, There But For There by Ali Smith. This story is weird as hell, as all Ali Smith books are. The concept is that there's a man who goes to a dinner party to visit some people he doesn't know very well, and during the course of the dinner party, he goes upstairs to an upstairs bedroom, locks himself in it, and just stays there for like weeks and weeks and months on end. And then the whole story just follows the fallout of the situation and what led to this situation and all the different threads that are connected between the characters who come into contact with this man or who are trying to contact him and can't. I just love it so much. It's so absurd in a way, like most Ali Smith stories are. Like, this is never going to happen, but it's interesting to think about what would happen if it did. You know what I mean? It's so based on you having to suspend your reality for the entirety of the book, but she does it in such a fun and playful way that you're sort of like, well, okay, let's just think about what would happen if this did. If someone did do that, that's so weird. Like, that's so quirky. What would happen? I just love when Ali Smith does that. He makes these very weird, wacky situations feel so obvious. And I love that she uses it as a way through which to view politics as well, and the different ways in which different generations interact with politics and how those generations then interact with each other because of that. Her writing style is always so playful. She never takes the words that she's using too seriously. She always has like something funny to say about the turns of phrase that the characters use. I just think it's so clever, but it's also just so childlike. And I think if you can interact with language in that way, it just truly shows that you love the language and that you love to have that childlike curiosity about the words that you're using, and like these things that people take for granted are just reassessed, and you don't have to just think about the way in which people always think about it. You can sort of like turn it on its head and see and inspect it from that angle. Ali Smith just does it the best. I love this book of hers. It's one of my favorites now that I've ever read by her. One of the characters in this book who I like the most is a little girl who's actually the same age as me. This book was published in 2010, and in 2010 I was 10 years old, like the character in that book. So it was really cool to see the different ways in which this little girl was interacting with the world around her, because I remember that time so vividly and felt so cool to have a character like that, because there's very few characters I've read about who are, first of all, Gen Z, and second of all, who are children, and then interacting with the world in the, noughties or 2010s, because that's such a weird time period to have been a child in. I'm really glad that I have some representation there. I really felt very seen by that little girl. And then finally, my favourite book so far of 2025 is Drag Your Flower Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. This book is so weird. I loved it so much. It's about an old Polish woman who lives in a tiny town close to the Czech border, and she's very isolated from many different people. She does have a couple of friends who live in the town as well, but the main thing that happens in this is that at the beginning of the book, somebody suddenly dies in the town, and it's the middle of the winter, and it's only her and her neighbor who are there, and they discover this person, and they sort of try to figure out what happened. But then a lot of other people also start to die in this town, and it seems like there's a sort of murderous figure in the town who is offing all of these people, but they don't know for sure. And this woman is saying like, oh no, it's the animals, they're like getting back at them for hunting in the forest and things like that. It's just so fun to read. The character is so batty, she's so strange, she's got the most convoluted thought processes, she's obsessed with astrology, which I love. I don't know if I believe in astrology, I don't really care about it that much. Originally, I pretended to believe in astrology because I just wanted to piss people off who didn't believe in it. And I mean, unfortunately, that is a very Gemini thing of me to do. So maybe astrology is real, but that's fine. Astrology doesn't oppress people, so who cares? But this character is super into astrology, and then whenever she meets a person, she sort of tries to analyze them by analyzing their astrology charts. And it's so absurd because she'll go to like the police station, they'll like want to bring her in for questioning because she saw the aftermath of this murder, and then she'll see the police chief and she'll be like, oh well, what time were you born? That is the kind of unhinged that I like my female main characters to be. I love spending time in her head so much. She's so weird, but she's weird in a way that feels rewarding, and it feels like it's pushing the story forward. There's a reason for all these strange things that are happening, and I just love the way it came together at the end as well. Maybe the ending was predictable. I don't know. I didn't predict it just because I don't really like thinking about where a story is going. I just like to watch it unfold. I just loved it. It's so good. I never wanted the book to end. It's amazing. I have to read everything else that Olga Tokarczuk has published. I mean, she won the Nobel Prize. I mean, call me Mr. Nobel because I would give this book a prize. I recommend this book to absolutely everyone who wants a weird old female main character. I loved her so much. So those are all my favourite and least favourite books that I've read so far this year. Please let me know in the comments what books you like the most or like the least that you've read so far this year. I'd love to get some recommendations or stay away froms for the rest of the year. And otherwise, I will hopefully see you next week in another video. I'm working on a vlog at the moment, so hopefully that will be going up next week. And yeah, that's everything from me. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend ahead of you. Take care.